Sorry about that. Hi, welcome to my show, The Smile Revolution with Princess Wow. Yes, I am Princess Wow, also known as Mindy Fradkin. This is my 189th show since March 2020, but I had a radio show before, but years ago, so I'm just getting back into doing interviews the last couple of years. So we raise awareness to the healing power of a genuine smile. There are 16 kinds of smiles, according to the Dalai Lama. So it's only smiles with love, obviously. Okay. So let's see. I have a stage show, my first show in New York City since 2019, coming up April 11th, 7 o'clock at Pangea. I'm going to show you all. Okay, Pangea. New York City, it's 2nd Avenue and 11th. And April 11th is actually connected to Bob Dylan because it's the first night that he played in 1962 at Gertie's Folk City. And we're, of course, going to be talking about Bob Dylan tonight in Minnesota. So anyway, and the link is, I have the link if anybody is in New York or coming to New York, April 11th. The link is in my comments. And okay, it's Pangea. It's a really cool place. It's a really happening. A lot of really interesting performers play there. It's a dinner theater. And anyway, okay, so, and I'll just read you my short synopsis before I start my interview. Join Princess Wow as she uses hat happenings, colorful dolls, original smile music, and comedic storytelling to explore her journey from depression to starting a revolution about joy inspired by her dad's last smile. Mindy is a hat designer and creator of hat happenings, which the New York Times has profiled. And it's also been on I've been on Good Day New York like 3 or 4 times and other news outlets doing this hat happening. So the show is really a happening. Okay, now the next thing before I start my interview, actually Marc Percansky sent me my smile pillow. Thanks, Marc, if you're watching live, which I think you are. Okay, hold on one second. Who's on here? Let's see. Okay, Laura's on. Hi, Laura. Thanks for watching live. Okay, now Marc sent this to me. Okay, so let's see. All right, connecting to Bob Dylan, love letters of note, since it was Valentine's Day recently. It's compiled by Sean Usher. Hold on one second. Okay, so Johnny Cash was a big fan of Bob Dylan's and had him on his TV show, and they collaborated on duets. And Dylan, I'm pretty sure I read when I read the Cash on Cash book that that Dylan was really into Johnny Cash before he even came to New York. Okay, so here's a letter from Johnny Cash to June Carter, 1994. Happy birthday, Princess. We get old and get used to each other. We think alike. We read each other's minds. We know what the other wants without asking. Sometimes we irritate each other a little bit. Maybe sometimes take each other for granted. But once in a while, like today, I meditate on it and realize how lucky I am to share my life with the greatest woman I ever met. You still fascinate and inspire me. You influence me for the better. You're the object of my desire, the number one earthly reason for my existence. I love you very much. Happy birthday, Princess John. And then in 2003, I love June Carter. I do. Yes, I do. I love June Carter. I do. And she loves me. But now she's an angel and I'm not. Now she's an angel and I'm not. And 365 ways to give thanks. One for every day of the year. Brenda Shoshana. Today, February 27th. Visit a shut-in and bring a little gift. It's amazing how many of our senior citizens, and I'm dealing with this right now, are living alone as shut-ins, unable to get out by themselves. Call your local senior citizen center, Meals on Wheels organization, church, or temple, and find out the identity of the shut-ins. See if you can pinpoint those people who would enjoy a visit. Call the person and arrange a time for a visit. When you arrive, bring a little gift. You can bring a magazine, tape, bowl of soup, or any other lovely surprise. You can also ask if there's anything special the elderly person, I don't like the word elderly, I'm going to say elder, needs or wants. Just a short amount of time on your part can mean a great deal to individuals in a situation like this. The shut-in person will not feel entirely forgotten. You will bring contact and refreshment from the outside world to that person. If at all possible, perhaps you can arrange some regular visits so that person has something to look forward to. There's so many people that are in these senior homes that their families hardly ever visit them. And a lot of them, it's very, very sad to see. So if anybody could visit a senior home and do that, that would be great. And then when action follows heart, 365 ways to share kindness, Susan Spencer, editor-in-chief, Women's Day. Someone once said, don't ever hesitate to give a compliment. I try to give one every day, and I'm often rewarded with a smile. So there's Nancy. Okay, let's see. Nancy's here. Hi. Oh, you're excited about my Manhattan show? Thank you. I hope you two can come. That would be great. Yeah. So, okay. So, all right. So I think what I'm going to do now is start the interview. And so here we go. Hi, Mark and Keith.
Hi.
Hello, Mindy. Hello, Mindy.
It's good to see you both.
It's amazing to see you, both of you,
Yeah,
together.
I know. This is really fun, right?
Yes, I have a lot to say to this guy and to you.
Okay.
First of all, you may not believe this, but this is the first time I'm seeing this guy.
That's
Really?
true. That's true.
Really?
I wanted to do a Zoom with him when I was trouble writing my chapters.
Okay.
And I was having trouble doing it. I couldn't get started, and I said, Keith, I can tell it to you. I can't write it. Do you want to do a Zoom? He said, yes, but just send me anything you got. And from then on, that turned everything around, and I started writing, and I sent it to him. And we never did the Zoom. We didn't need it. It's not his job to Zoom and write my book for me.
Right.
So I did it. And but there was about 400 emails, right, Keith?
It was booked by 1,000 emails. It was, it was good, but it worked. Okay. But it's nice to finally see you, Mark, and to talk to you properly.
Yes.
I know,
Mindy,
I didn't even know this.
Mindy, you're going to know a lot of things you've never known before. The other thing is the reason I'm here is because of him as well. The reason I met you.
Because of him?
Yeah, and I bet neither of you know how that is.
Well, I think you and I met from Terry Thal.
Bravo. Now
Right?
let's go back. Let's go back to the Big Apple. Okay. Let's go back to Keith's second book, Bob Dylan and the Big Apple.
Let me say, Bob Dylan, right?
Because I'd like to clarify something for you here. Keith contacted Terry, and maybe I should just let him tell the story of how that came about.
Here, let's hear. Yeah, that'd be great.
It was wonderful because I had to do this during the lockdown here in the pandemic. So I was writing a book about Bob Dylan in New York, not in New York, and I had two wonderfully good researchers. And I said to one of them, Sarah, I said, look, I really, really would love to have Terry as an interviewee in the book, because I think she's such an important part of the Greenwich Village Bob Dylan story. I mean, she's integral to so much in Bob Dylan's life, and I thought it was wonderful. And she and there are, and I won't name the books, there are books that are 1,000 pages nearly, and all about Bob Dylan's life, and Terry never gets a mention. And I think that's just wrong. What we're trying to do with the Troubadour books, more than anything else, is to right wrongs in the story of Bob Dylan. And I said to Sarah, look, see if you can contact Terry, and if she'd be interested, because she doesn't talk a great deal about that time, and there haven't been many times that she's written about it. So it was, it was a shot in the dark, and Sarah spent hours and hours on the phone talking about the sort of movement, the left-wing sort of movement that there was in Greenwich Village at the time, and a lot of time. And eventually I got the interview with Terry. And because of that, she decided maybe people are interested in my story. Maybe I should write it. And I put her in touch with our publishers, with Mark and I's publishers, McNidder and Grace. And that book is now out.
That's really interesting.
Which Mark has been helping to publicize as well, because obviously, first and foremost, rather than just writers, Mark and I are huge fans. That's where we come from. Every book that's done in this series is very, very much a labor of love. So, it's good. And to get people like Terry to talk when basically she hasn't really put her story across is such a wonderful thing. Such a wonderful thing.
Right. So how did you start? This is your first okay. Well, how did you get into Bob Dylan when you were a kid? You went to that festival. How did you get into?
Yeah, I was a very, very, very young child at the Isle of Wight Festival, 1969. And my auntie took me across to the Isle of Wight, and all I thought was basically there are these very odd looking people. You come from a South London council estate and you don't see anything that looks like a hippie in 1969. To see that was wonderful. But really the first, and then of course once Bob Dylan had played at the Isle of Wight, he didn't come back for a long time. He didn't come back till 1978.
Oh wow.
And I was a teenager, I slept overnight on the pavements of Hammersmith with my sister just to get tickets for Bob Dylan. And that was kind of the start, really. It was, and he's been a constant in my life ever since, really.
Have you ever met him?
No. It's sadly not. I'm pretty one of the proudest moments of my writing life so far is to learn that I was lucky enough to talk at the Bob Dylan Center in Tulsa.
Right.
But someone sent me a picture a little while ago. They went to the center, and there are more copies of my book in Bob Dylan's library there than Bob Dylan's book. So
wow.
So
at the Bob Dylan Center?
Yeah, at the Bob Dylan Center.
Really?
Yeah,
wow.
There's more copies of my book, so that's lovely to hear.
You mean the whole series? The series, right?
Yeah. Well, there are four books now.
Oh, there are four. So what are the four?
Well, it began with where I'm familiar with. So it was basically
Bob Dylan in London.
Bob Dylan in London, which I did with a co-author, Jackie Lees. We were teenage fans. We had pictures of Bob Dylan on our wall when we were growing up, and we went to university together, and we set up the Bob Dylan room at the Troubadour Club in Earl's Court, which is one of the first places Bob Dylan played in England.
Oh, wow.
So when that first book came out, we were approached by the publishers. They said, your project looks really good. Would you like us to publish it? Would you like it to be a proper guidebook? And we said, yeah, that's fine. And at that time they offered me a contract for 4 books. So then in the pandemic, I did the guide,
the one in New York, Bob Dylan in New York,
Bob Dylan in the Big Apple.
Okay,
which was great. And then with a friend of mine who's an expert on Dylan Thomas, got a chap called Jeff Towns. We did the 2 Dylans, which is where the kind of connecting stories between Bob Dylan and Dylan.
Really? Oh, wow.
And that was fascinating. The research was wonderful because you got into all sorts of different characters that basically link the lives of Bob Dylan and Dylan Thomas, who I see is very much that kind of, wandering poet type, sort of troubadour sort of style, both of them. And it took us to, it's every connection that they have between them, for everything from Stravinsky to Chaplin to Nelson Algren, all sorts of people. The French poet Arthur Rimbaud, who obviously I'm wearing the beret this evening in honor of Arthur Rimbaud, who was a wonderful character and was a huge inspiration for both Bob Dylan and Dylan Thomas.
Well, that's really interesting.
Yeah, and one of the things I wanted to do there was to absolutely nail for good that there is the absolute link between the name Dylan Thomas, which in fact, what happened was, this I find fascinating, until Dylan Thomas's father was a school teacher in Swansea. Okay. And there's a very ancient text called the Mabinogion, which is a folklore tale that goes way back. And that's the only early known reference to the name Dylan. And until Dylan Thomas's father called him Dylan Thomas, and then of course Dylan Thomas became famous over here, became very famous in New York, there were no people called Dylan.
No?
Nope. And it's in the book. You can see, you can go back through the records. There would there's millions of people called Dylan around the world.
Now, yeah. That's amazing.
That name just came from Dylan Thomas's father. So
that's incredible.
And for absolutely, for final academic purposes, we show in the book how Bob Dylan got his name from Dylan Thomas. And that was great doing the research. It was
really interesting.
Yeah, no, I mean, this is what I enjoy. It's fun. I enjoy doing this work. It's
right. Well, I know. I love doing research too when I do these interviews. I know it's fascinating to dive in deep with people's lives.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. And that's got some great tales. And then, of course.
And then the one that I just read that we're going to talk about today.
Yeah. Well, the final book, obviously, I needed to finish the guidebook side of things. And the only place to finish is the beginning. Right. And it was very important to me that I did this right. This is, there were some nice books about, well, not many books about Bob Dylan and Duluth, Bob Dylan in Hibbing, nothing that brought the whole Minnesota bit together.
Okay.
And certainly nothing that really did much about Dinkytown, which I found quite fascinating, which was really the first folk scene that Bob Dylan cut his teeth on.
Right.
And that was quite important. That was an absolutely essential part of the development of Bob Dylan as a singer-songwriter.
Yeah. So no books have ever talked about any of this before?
Not much.
Not much.
Really very little.
Well, I never knew anything about any of this till I read the book.
And this was my opportunity to, I had two choices. Either I spent 10 years living in Minnesota, or I got the best people that knew all about the story and knew intimately as Bob Dylan fans, people like Marc, Paul Metsa, Ed Newman, Matt Steichen, the other guys in this book. And it was very much a team Troubadour Tales.
So you met Marc Percansky, who I don't know, he had a tech issue. I don't know why he dropped out, but anyway.
He's gone.
I know he's gone. I don't know what happened. Anyway, okay, so hopefully he'll be back on. Okay, so in the meantime, you met him on X, which was Twitter, right?
Yes.
You met him on X. So how did you meet?
Way back in the day. Well, it's a strange thing. Twitter was on X as it is now. I got approached by my publishers on Twitter. I think there's a great deal of, it's a wonderfully good and productive marketplace for a lot of things. And one of the great things is that you've got a wonderful Dylan Twitter community who all, pop in and out of Twitter. You all the tour, we're blessed that Bob Dylan tours to this day. So it's very important for people keeping in touch with each other and making sure that they can meet up at concerts and things like that.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's cool.
When Bob Dylan was here last, my co-author in the London book, Jackie Lees, we run the Dylan Room at the Troubadour, which is a room that's dedicated to Bob Dylan, and people go and meet there. And when Bob Dylan played the last time at the Palladium over here in London, we used that as like a fan zone. People could just go and meet other people. You could go in.
Oh, that's really cool.
Oh, absolutely wonderful. It's a great bar and cafe, and people could go there anytime that they were going to see Bob Dylan or before they were seeing him.
What do you have books of it? What do you have books of?
We have books there. We have all sorts there.
All sorts of memorabilia. Okay.
On the wall, there's all sorts of stuff there. This is where Bob Dylan played for the first time in 1972 when he came over to London, and that was a very important time for him to go from just a big fish in Greenwich Village. And Albert Grossman brought him over to London to think, see how this guy does. Is he really the big deal, or is he just a big deal in Greenwich Village?
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay, good.
Because Albert Grossman, his manager, wasn't looking for a singer-songwriter. He wanted a band to replace the Weavers, because Pete Seeger at the time was having a great deal of difficulty because of the political climate. Right. So basically, Albert Grossman thought, well, I'm not sure. Is this guy going to be good? How's he going to be on the world stage? If I take him out of Greenwich Village, what happens?
Oh, okay. I didn't know that part. Okay, that's cool. That's really neat.
Yeah, and that 1962 time, he played the Troubadour. And Jackie, when Bob Dylan won the Nobel Prize a few years back, and before the London book came out, Jackie and I went to the Troubadour on a pilgrimage. These are the places where Bob Dylan played that were important to him. And, it was absolutely gobsmacking. The Troubadour was a wonderful venue and still is a wonderful venue. But in the early 1960s, it's where Bob Dylan kind of first started on the world stage. It's where Paul Simon started out. Jimi Hendrix played there. Right. In latter years, Adele and Ed Sheeran played there. Oh, cool. And we got there, and there were pictures of the Beatles on the wall. It's like, these are the only guys that haven't played here.
Oh, that's interesting. Okay.
So we basically wanted to put up, images of Bob Dylan. We wanted people to know how important it was to Bob Dylan's career. And that was the reason for having it there. And it's still a great place for Bob Dylan fans to go to when they're in London. And
when did you start it? Or you started it with another person?
We started it about 4 years ago now.
So 4 years ago. Okay.
It's been going a little while. It's still great for Bob Dylan fans to go there. And I think there should be more places like that. I mean, I probably upset a lot of Bob Dylan fans at the Bob Dylan Center in Tulsa, which is a wonderful, wonderful place.
Okay, now I want to ask you, now, why is it not in Minnesota, the Dylan Center? How did it get there? Yeah, Tulsa. How did it get there?
Well, that's the thing. I think it should be in Minnesota. I really do.
Why did it get to there? Because of Woody Guthrie.
Because the Woody Guthrie Center's there, and a kindly, very rich benefactor bought all of Bob Dylan's archive, and he wanted it in Tulsa. Tulsa's, they do a wonderful job. The center is lovely, and I was so delighted and honored to be able to speak there in the inaugural conference. So it was wonderful to do that.
And when did that open?
Well, 2019 unofficially, and then the year after officially.
So it just opened recently. I see.
Yeah. No, this is all very new. I didn't realize
that. Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
This is all very new. It's worth going to if you're in Oklahoma. Then
right, if you're in Oklahoma, right? Okay. Okay, great. Okay, so let's talk about the book a little bit. I can't get over this book, really. It's amazing how I never knew any of this about his background. And my ex-husband, was friends with Dylan.
Oh, okay.
I was married to a folk singer. We're still good friends. But he was friends with Dylan at the height of his fame in the 70s in the Village, you know. So, and I was also close to Pete Seeger, too. So every conversation kind of ends up Pete Seeger's mentioned, it seems like.
Yeah.
You know, everything goes back to Pete. But anyway, it's really interesting. I didn't know any of this about Dylan Day and like Dylan Festival and like and then the Dylan mural. It's really fascinating, this book. Now, how did you hook up? Oh, you hooked up with Mark when X. And then is that how you met the other authors?
Yeah, most of them I knew were big Bob Dylan fans, and Matt Steichen is a guy whose entire family are Bob Dylan fans.
Okay.
And everything. He met his wife at a Dylan concert.
And that's right, I read about that. Oh, that's him. Yeah. Oh, he's one of the authors. Oh, I see.
He's one of the authors.
I see.
And we had Ed Newman, who's a great sort of journalist and writer in Minnesota. And Paul Metsa is a wonderful musician who does a lot of the gigs around the Minnesota area, and at one stage lived in Bob Dylan's childhood home. And he's wonderful. I just give a quick plug to Paul Metsa's book, which is called Blue Guitar Highway, which is a fabulous book about being a musician. And most music books are quite dull, because they're like how I had this hit and then I played this stadium, and it's not really like how it is to be a musician. And Paul's book is a fabulous book.
Okay, great.
And some of the guys have also written about the Blood on the Tracks session, which is very important. You know, a lot of people up until fairly recently had no idea that, you know, a good chunk and the most important chunk, tracks like Tangled Up and Blue and Idiot Wind were laid down in Minnesota.
I know. Yeah.
And,
yeah. A lot of people don't know this, right? And
I think the general perception is that, you know, for most Bob Dylan fans is that the chronology goes: Bob Dylan left Duluth, left Hibbing, left New York, and took on the world.
Exactly. You don't know about the backstory. You know about he arrives 1961 in Greenwich Village.
Yeah, but also the fact that he arrived, but he never stopped going back to Minnesota.
I know. I never knew that. I never knew that either.
Yeah, no, he goes back a lot. He had the farm there.
Right, he bought the farm in the 70s. His brother
was in the family, and you know, his own, as you'll see from the book, his own theatres there. You know, he's very much still a Minnesotan.
I know.
And I think, you know, and we got a wonderful review which would warm the heart of myself, Mark, and all the co-authors. You know, which said reading this book kind of means that Minnesota's got Bob Dylan back. And I thought that was so wonderful. That if you could do one thing for the book, it's that. You know, Minnesota's got Bob Dylan back, and that is so important, because it's where he's from. You know, and I also think that Minnesota, you know, there is the mural. There are certain places you can go to. There's tours, but there's not enough made of the fact that two of the finest pop musicians of all time, Bob Dylan and Prince, come from Minnesota.
That's right, Prince too. Right, you're right.
You know, and that's extraordinary.
It is.
One small state could produce two such extraordinary, talented musicians.
Right. And the thing about you're right. And the thing about Prince is he never left. Like he always stayed in Minnesota. He loved being home where he's from.
Yeah, no, and to be honest with you, I think that's the same with Bob Dylan.
That's why he bought the farm, right?
Yeah, you know, he never really left. You know, he as everyone does with their hometown, you feel a little ambivalent towards it. You know, it made me,
Right, yeah.
you know, and you know, people have to leave to become famous and known and successful.
Right.
Quite often, you know, and unless you're born in New York or London, you've got to,
right.
you've got to go.
Or Los Angeles, right.
Or Los Angeles,
right.
But there are very few places that you can stay,
right.
and you can have that sort of career. And I think it's extraordinary that you know, Minnesota has not one but two extraordinary, talented stars that came from there. And you know, I think it's good to get across to people how much, you know, Minnesota meant to Bob Dylan and how much it made him. And that's why I think it was quite important to put in the DINKYTOWN part, you know, because he went away.
Oh, wait a second. Hold it. I'm gonna see if I can add Mark back on.
There we go.
Is Mark back on? Mark!
Hi.
I'm back on.
We missed you.
I know
Well,
we missed you.
Well, so Mindy, I reached out to Mindy, asked her if she had her own CD, and she did, which I got.
Ah, right. Nice.
There's a
Thank you for the
great
applause,
quote on the
Mark.
back by Pete Seeger about her, which I would read if we had more time. But then we started counting, and it was all because McNitter and Grace wanted me to help Terry with PR. And I reached out, and I met, and I saw that Terry was a two-parter with Mindy, and it was awesome. And I had no intention of going on her show, and we started being friends. And I sent her the book, and she said, "Well, why don't you go on the book?"
Yeah, so that's how this happened. Right?
That's how that happened. Moving forward, I came to and Mindy made me think all about hats. That's all that's coming to my mind. My mom was a hat lady. Bob is a hat man.
Oh, so you're right. I didn't think about that.
Bob Dylan is a hat man. More than
he loves a hat.
He loves hats.
Keith, come on, right? You know.
No, you're right. When I think about it, a lot of times
he has worn hats his whole career. But I found in his own words why he started wearing hats. Do you want to hear it?
Yes.
One, yeah.
Bob Dylan's very first job, and the reason why he started wearing hats, from Far Out magazine in the UK. Since Bob Dylan began in the music game, he has seen all the changes in how musicians write, record, and play live music, as well as seeing love go by his door countless times. Even in 1984, Dylan was considered a veteran. During an interview with Martha Quinn, the musician looked back at his early gigs and revealed the truth behind his trademark look. During the conversation, Quinn asked Dylan for his thoughts on the Van Halen singer David Lee Roth, to which he surprisingly replied, "I don't know him. I know who his uncle is. I used to work for his uncle. As a matter of fact, his uncle gave me my very first job. I have very fond memories of his uncle, Manny Roth." Roth Sr. had been a nightclub owner and an entertainment entrepreneur, which is how Dylan got to know him. His uncle Manny is a terrific guy, the singer-songwriter continued. Does he know that? He gave a lot of people their first jobs, as I remember. I'm sure there are a lot of people back down in the street that worked for Manny, Jimi Hendrix, Gordon Lightfoot. Evidently, Roth had been instrumental helping young musicians to get their careers off the ground. Dylan fondly remembered, "I worked for Manny all afternoons from 12 until 8. I worked the day shift back then." He had a cafe which stayed open from 11 in the morning until 4 in the morning. And there was constantly something happening on stage. However, back then, the gig industry was not the lucrative business it is today. You never really did get popular there because nobody was billed on the outside, Dylan said. To tell you the truth, he didn't pay after that. So after you played, you had a hat or a basket or whatever you wanted to bring. According to Bob, this is why he began to wear hats in the first place. "I never used to wear hats. Most people did," he said. The musician went on to explain in more detail the importance of hat wearing. "My hat was rather large when you think of it. It might have been a bag," he said. "There were people who came in and used to wonder why people played with bag 10-gallon cowboy hats. And it's because you used to pass it around to get paid. The bigger the hat, the more money you made, you know?" So Terry also got his first cap. She said he gave her that cap. She'd be happy to know this story. It started his hat wearing back in Greenwich Village. So I thought I would tell you that.
That's interesting.
Yeah. So you can hear me okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so back to hats, and Bob visited my house a lot, and I'll tell you a few things about him. So he back in the day, he'd call. This was in the 80s, and there was no cell phones. He would have to tell somebody where he was going when he was leaving. Call me at this number. Right. We've come a long way since then. My family home had 2 phone numbers in case one line was a busy signal. He could call on the other one. What he would do is he would call for my mom, and when he was in town, I always like to see her, and he'd call and ring the phone, and then my mom would answer, I would answer, and he'd hang up on us. He did this several times for maybe a few days or however long, and then we knew it was him because he'd eventually show up at the door. He wanted to see if she was home. So anyhow, one time I met a lot of people because he came over to the house and the phone rang, and one time, my mom, he's in the house and my mom's talking to him. Phone rings. She answers. She goes, hello. She goes, hi, is Bob there? She goes, yes, who's calling? She goes, Diana. So he goes, okay, Bob, there's a Diana on the phone for you. Okay, I'll take the call. It was Diana Ross looking to get the licensing for Forever Young on her album. So that's how I met like Louis Kemp, his other buddy. One time he called him there. He was living with him, and I met him and did magic for him. And that's one of the ways I did a lot of things. But anyhow, one day Bob is at our door.
Your mother met Bob in college. They
Yeah.
made it in college.
I can't hear real good. Richard, can you help me? Yeah, that's correct. But well, my mom, they always stayed in touch, and they always were, my mom had another life. He had another life. That's where the album Infidels comes into play. And I wrote a chapter about infidels. And it talks about a song called Sweetheart Like You. So one day he's at my front door and he's knocking. He's standing there, and he's standing at the door with a hat. This hat. Do you have any idea what kind of hat this is, Mindy? So there's no tag on it, no nothing. And so I said, come on up, Bob. I wrote about this in the book.
It looks kind of like from the 1700s. It looks really.
Yeah. So anyhow, I gave it to my mom, and she put a little pin in it here, and she wore it a lot. And
He gave it to her. That's the hat.
Yeah, and he didn't give us a lot of things. I talk about another cassette tape he gave me during the Real Live album. It's another chapter I wrote for our book. And so she was happy to get this, and she wore it to death. And just loved it. So Bob used to try on hats in her closet. She had a closet full of hats. You would have really loved her, and she would have loved you, because you're the hat lady. You remind me a little like of Lucille Ball, Carol Burnett, and Bette Midler all rolled into one.
Thank you.
But nobody has hats like you, so I'm going, and I want, so I had to wear a hat. But anyhow,
Make them, Keith. You know that I make them.
I know you make them. You got to make one for Keith and I.
Yes.
homemade hats. But anyhow, so that song, Sweetheart Like You, wrote a song about it. By the way, that's a cute hat, and it smiles so hard to resist. And I wrote about that book, and I know it's about her, this song. And that's one of the chapters I wrote about. They really like each other, and got along very well. They were, he thought she was a very eccentric lady, and she liked him, and and they went through life, different stages. His farm is about 20 minutes, just outside of the town from my family home, and so when this time came for me to write a book, which I had no intention of writing a book, I've been asked that I was not writing any books. This guy contacts me like a blessing, like a godsend out of nowhere. He went, and my mother was alive. And I said, okay, Keith, I thought he wanted me to assist helping him research the book.
No, we want all of you down in writing, Mark. That's what we wanted.
Take everywhere you can imagine. Go to your favorite retailer, wherever they buy a book, and it's there. It's even in Russia, I think. They did a great job. Amazon, Barnes & Noble, your common ones.
And it came out, last year?
April 26th in the UK, June 1st in America.
2022 or 23?
2023.
It came out last year.
Just last year. We worked on it about a year, Keith, right?
I guess it was about a year. It took a lot. It's amazing. I worked with co-authors on the other books, but to work with 4 other co-authors, they would say is career suicide. But it was fine. It was good, and everyone was splendidly. Well, number one, as I said to you before, Mindy, Paul Metsa's written a fabulous book about what it's like to be a musician. Blue Guitar Highway is a great book. And the fact that Ed and Matt and Mark can all write really, really well makes it easy. You know, it's not, you know, there was no God, what is this? How the hell are we going to edit this stuff? It was all very, very easy to do because they're all great writers.
Okay, great. Okay, so we're back.
And you play the ukulele?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay.
I do. My new show. I'm getting ready for my show in New York City in April.
She
So
squeezed us in, Keith. She's got a big show.
And I know I got a
Right,
big show.
yeah.
Hey, and
Wow.
we're following Carolyn Hester and Tom Paxton.
Wow.
That's
a
what you're
good lineup.
following. Yeah.
We
Uh-huh.
got big shoes to fill here today.
Yes, that's right. So anyway,
Both legends.
yeah. So well, it's all because of Richard Barone and Pete Seeger, like my connections. I was married to a folk singer. I said Roland Musa, and I got into the whole
Your
my husband. We're divorced.
Wasband.
We're still friends. Wasband is a friendly term, meaning we're still
Love
friends.
it. Never heard it before. Only you.
Yeah. So anyway, so Richard Barone, I met, so I was invited to the Carnegie Hall concert with the Music Plus Revolution book. And that's how I met Tom, and Terry I met through Richard Barone. And that's how we all met through them. So anyway, this is what I was saying. Now, you may not have heard me. Flo Kastner, that chapter, and then talking about something with Dylan started with pop and rock early on before he discovered Woody Guthrie, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, people were surprised when Bob Dylan went electric, but he always wanted to be a rock and roller.
To join Little Richard in his yearbook.
That's right. You know, right from early days, that's the motivation was to be a rock and roller, and you know, the folk part I think suited his sort of literary aspirations, really. I mean, in the first book I wrote about his meeting with the poet and writer Robert Graves, and I think we have to bear in mind that Bob Dylan started the road to the Nobel Prize very early on. You know, and when you go to the Bob Dylan Center in Tulsa and you look at the early lyrics, one of the things that actually stands out is that pretty much they're all typed. You know, if you look at other people's lyrics, you look at the Beatles lyrics right through till quite late, that, you know, and lots of musicians, they write lyrics on scraps of paper,
right,
things like that. But Bob Dylan knew he was taking a literary path. You know, there's a I think maybe hopefully not an apocryphal story about him, and I can't think what song it is now, but he's in the back of a taxi with a typewriter typing it on his lap. You know, and he knew that these things were going to end up in a museum. That was the aim. This is what he wanted to do. He wanted to be an acclaimed, serious writer like Robert Graves. You know, again, I talk in the first book about, you know, and I'd love this to be true, that when there was a lot of reports that Robert Graves had died, and in the mid-60s, it's said that Bob Dylan went out to where he lived in Greece on the Greek island, and Robert Graves' wife wouldn't let him in the house, you know, but he took a copy of his album. I have no idea if that's true. It seems very far-fetched, but it's a lovely story, and I think, you know, we shouldn't forget that Bob Dylan really was you know, a rock and roller who wanted to be a poet. You know, he took his name from Dylan Thomas. You know, he wanted to be serious. He wanted to be seen as a literary figure, and of course he is. He certainly is.
Right. Oh, I see. That's interesting. And then the story about, I know Rob Stoner, and he's written up in the book because he toured a lot with him. And I met him years ago through Roland Musa, my husband. And he talks about, he didn't understand the song Visions of Johanna, what that meant. And there's that story about on the back of the fish truck
that loads. Back in the fish truck that loads while my conscience explodes. Explain the story about that. Hey, I can't explain that song to anybody. That's one of his top 5 best songs.
Oh, it
I
is.
tell you,
Okay.
You
I tell you one of
that's
one of
about
the only one of the only people I know that I've interviewed that can tell you exactly what that song is about. Who I had to interview for the New York book, because he had to be in there, a bit like Terry. They're part of the story. They have to be in there. Was the pantomime villain of the piece, which is A.J. Weberman, who is, bless his cotton socks, a really very out there kind of guy.
Okay.
I mean, I did a telephone interview with him, and I thought, I'm going to go in, I'm going to ask him every question I want to ask. I'm not going to worry, and at some point he's going to turn the phone off on me, because but he will tell you he knows exactly what Bob Dylan's talking about in every song, really.
Wow. Okay.
I said to him, I said, look, are you sorry for things you did to Bob when he was in New York? And he said, yeah, I really do regret knocking on his family's door and things like that. I mean, he's a crazy dude. He's a crazy dude. But
how old is he, Keith? How old is J.J. Weberman now?
He's slightly older than Bob. So Bob's 82, then he's about 83, 84 or something like that. And, we had a really good chat about, this is the only person to have wrestled Bob Dylan on the sidewalk in New York. It's he's a crazy part of Bob Dylan's story, but he's part of the story. Oh,
well, you could have interviewed my ex-husband, Roland, because he was friends with him in the Village in the 70s, and he actually saved Dylan's life. And you don't know that story, I bet.
No.
It's written up in one or two of Bob Dylan's books. So, there's a whole story behind that. I can't say it right now, but anyway, okay. But anyway, I can tell you later. But
that's the joy of having these guys on the Minnesota book, because one of the other co-authors, Matt Steichen, he said to me, he said, of course, you'll probably want to have the story of the other motorcycle crash. It's like, yep, we can need that story in there.
There's another one. Okay.
Well, there's a very near fatal one, but it's a great story, and it these are the little insights that you can only get from people like your good selves who know people who know all the stories.
Oh, actually, I can tell you. It is written up in at least one of Bob Dylan's books. Well, anyway, so Phil Oakes and Bob Dylan and Roland, they were at one of the clubs in the Village. It was in the 70s, and Phil Oakes was like, really, Phil Oakes and Bob they were friends, but Phil Oakes was really jealous of Bob, and he was had a lot of mental, about Phil Oakes' his mental problems. Yes. So anyway, you know about that. Anyway, yes. So what happened was one night he carried a knife on him, and one night they were all in the back of one of the clubs, and Roland was there, and Phil Oakes was taking out his knife. He was going to stab Dylan, and Roland grabbed the knife. This is a true story. Roland grabbed the knife.
I believe you. I don't think I've heard this.
Yeah, I'm telling you. Yeah, and he threw it in the trash can.
Wow.
And Bob knew it too. Roland saved his life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting? Phil killed himself, and he had mental problems at the end, and he was just insanely jealous of Dylan.
Yeah. And then Donovan and Bob had their falling out too. Donovan.
Yeah.
Oh, they did? Oh, that I don't know about.
It kind of.
Oh, okay.
That's kind of documented.
I think you have to. It's quite an interesting part of the Big Apple book is that all of, and I think it was Dave Van Ronk said that once that Greenwich Village sort of folk scene became really big very quickly in itself, and then kind of faded out. And I'm pretty sure it's Dave Van Ronk who said, look, once Bob Dylan became the big star out of that scene, right, we knew that was the end for the rest of us. We're not, really? That's it. That's the big star. There's not going to be another one. And you've got such, the whole book, the whole Big Apple book is full of tragedy, basically. There's a lot about people like Karen Dalton, wonderful musicians and singers who basically just went off the rails and didn't last very long. A lot of them didn't live very long, you know, and I think Dave Van Ronk's probably right. You know, once Dylan had become the big international superstar, there isn't room for another one. It's a bit like the Beatles. There was a huge Mersey beat scene with lots of bands. And once the Beatles became internationally famous, that's it for the rest of them. No one else. There's not two Mersey beat international superstars. There's not another Greenwich Village folk singer on the main stage. That's it. You know, which is pretty daunting.
Still made it. But some of them still, like, you know, like Joan Baez and Richie Havens, who I was Ron was close with, and he recorded one of the songs. There are other ones that did well. I mean, they may not have been as famous.
They're not going to come remotely close to. I mean, you don't forget. Obviously, Joan Baez was there first. You know, she'd got to a certain level of fame before Bob became famous, really, and essentially she'd got a platform. Although, having said that, and I say this as someone who absolutely loves Joan Baez, you know, she's not at Bob's level.
That's true. You're right.
You know, that's a reality. That's a reality.
People get that.
Like Richie Brown's concert. It ended with "Blowing in the Wind," the concert you were at, Mindy.
Right. Yeah, now I know. It's like not everybody, most people don't become that world famous. So anyway, I thought this was interesting in the book. It said, despite playing with music legends worldwide, the most meaningful to share a stage with was Fargo's Bobby Vee in 1959. Vee's band was his first taste of showbiz. I thought that was interesting.
We need Matt Steichen for the Bobby Vee story.
Anyway, you all don't know the story.
I do know it. I know that Bob loved him.
Yeah,
you know.
He did, and that was his first sort of step onto the kind of professional stage, really. And he used to pretend to be Bobby Vee, didn't he?
Yes.
But he only played in Minnesota 3 times.
Bob.
No,
there's a whole chapter, a whole list of discography of all the times Bob has played professionally in Minnesota.
Oh, right in the
back of the book. He's played here 40, 50 times in the state since his professional career. We don't know how many times he played in the village, in the Dinkytown folk clubs. I mean, it's hard to document that. Professionally, every single show is in the book. He hasn't played here since 2019.
Okay.
So he always played here.
Mark, do you think he's going to finish there?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
I would
count him out. He's working.
I would really love that to be the case.
It's so hard to count him out, Keith, right? He's gonna, I don't know, go on and on and on.
Well, I kind of have a view that, I mean, considering he put down on the Rough and Rowdy tour that it would finish in 2024.
He did say that?
Yeah.
He'd already done that. And I think essentially he'd probably end his touring career, if he could plan it, at either the Beacon in New York,
because he loves New York,
which I think is the ideal place. Obviously, I'd like the London Palladium, but that's not real.
He loves New York City.
He loves New York, and I think the Beacon would be the best place. But essentially, one last little gig at a small joint in Minnesota would be
great. You got to fly in for that, Keith. Maybe that'll get you to fly in here.
That'll get me in, Mark. That'll get me in.
Mindy, have you ever been to Minnesota, Mindy?
No.
No? Well, you both got it coming. I'm about 2 miles from the big Bob Dylan mural that's in the book, picture of the book. And I helped consult with that. That was amazing. They did that in 10 days. And it's there's Orpheum Theater that Bob owned, a theater here for 11 years. So, there's a lot of history here that Bob has, and he's still here, still loves it here. He spent a lot of time here. And that's what.
When was the last time you talked to him, Mark?
I talked to him. I see him at shows here and there. I don't get. He knows about my mom passing away, and he knows about our book. What's he going to comment about all these books written about him? And the new book by the Bob Dylan Center in Tulsa came out with a book. And it starts with the quote that Bob made about, I think everybody should write a book about me. If you've got something to say, write it.
Okay.
And back when I would see more of him, he was fascinated by everything about him. I gave him fanzines, tapes, bootlegs. I once, I go back before internet, I had a whole stack of vinyl bootlegs, and he saw them, and he's looking through them at my house, and he goes, Mark, I could have you arrested for having all these.
Oh, God. Yeah, they are illegal, right?
They're illegal and all that, but he would love, if he had time and he was going to live to 200 years, he would keep up. He knows everything about himself, the images portrayed of him. He keeps up on all the best he can.
Okay.
He's going to be 83. He's working hard. He's lining up, 70, 80 tour dates this year. The one thing I will say about him is he is not retiring unless his health takes him there.
Right. Yeah. Okay.
He will go on that stage, or thereafter he will go. He loves it. That's what he does. Yeah. I'll tell you, this is what I do. This is what I'm put on.
Right. Yeah. Oh, he's not going to do nothing. Yeah.
When he stops, he'll maybe, Rough and Rowdy Ways, his last album. I think it's one of his top 5 best albums of all time. It shot up the charts. I mean, there's some amazing songs on there, and don't count him out. His mind is still working. He can still write, still go. And when his time is done, his time is up, and nobody knows. He'll still be on top wherever it happens and when it happens. He's playing piano now in concert mostly, not much guitar, and he's sitting.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
And so I don't all this stuff about him retiring and this is the end of this tour. And where's it going to be? He don't know. We don't know. He said, like, how long? How do we know how long we're going to live? We don't.
Nobody knows.
He's a lifetime musician, and he took it to the top over the mountain, and we'll see what the future brings. God bless him. Let him go on to 120 like Moses on the mountain. Mindy will have more shows in New York. Maybe I had a dream about you, Mindy, that you took your show on tour. Your new show.
My new one. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not making up. I had a dream that you take it on tour.
Okay.
Like you play at the Orlando. So I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know my dream.
My other one I did. We'll see. Yeah, we'll
see. I wish I was there. I wish you could get some film of it. We'd love to see it.
I know. I'm hiring a videographer.
It's a lot of work. The show is in New York City, down in the
on the Lower East Side. Yeah.
First one you've ever done in Manhattan?
No, it's for my new show. It's my first the new show. I had another show I did in Manhattan, LA, and then this one I took to London last year.
How many hats do you have?
Oh, I don't know. It's like usually like 100 or so. I don't know.
Now, question for Keith. Hundreds.
Huh?
They're beautiful. They're all so wonderful, beautiful. Keith has written now 4 books, Bob Dylan related. He says this is the end of Bob Dylan before Bob starts coming at him. Stop writing about me, but I don't know.
Yeah.
You can't
Get me on the phone. Stop now. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So wait a second. So Mark, are you gonna? You said you're gonna write a book?
Me, I don't know if I'm ever. I don't know. I don't know what. My family owned a nightclub in town that I was thinking of writing about. It was 40 years in business. Bob was aware of it. It was called the Flame Cafe. It's got a lot of history. Patsy Cline, Willie Nelson never played this. So I might write about that. I might write about Magic Mark's story, my life with the musicians that my mom took. Don't know.
Oh, okay.
More Bob stories? I don't know, Keith. I don't know. I have more.
Okay.
I have plenty more Bob stories.
Okay. All right. So is there anything else you want to, let's wrap this up. Is anything else you want to finish by saying that you want to say?
Well, maybe we just keep on going, keep on keeping on, stay forever young, and have fun with life.
Okay.
Yeah. He's got something new coming out. I don't know if I should say.
Yeah, no, I've got. As Mark says, I was slightly worried that Bob was finally going to pick up the phone and ring me and say, "Stop writing books about me." The first conversation we ever had, I think, would be that one. But no, I moved on to other things now. I'm working on my own poetic path. That's not why I'm wearing this hat, by the way. But I'm working on my own stuff, which Mark knows well, which we hope we'll do. But I just would urge any music fans really to that's how a musician starts off in life. That's the best kind of introduction. And it's great stories. I love, I came upon the Troubadour Tales sort of way. I personally think all books are far too big. That's the size of book you want. That's what you want. You can put in your pocket and it's got a map in the middle and you go around Minnesota and you follow it round with the tales.
And you both come here and I'll take you both on a tour of everything in here.
You're definitely on. We're definitely on. We'll do that live on TV.
Both of you in person. This is good, but in person.
Be splendid. Absolutely splendid. But
Not in the winter though, because it's
No.
really cold, right?
Don't come here in January.
Don't
We're
come in
having
the
the best
winter.
winter ever this year, but don't go to Duluth in the winter.
Okay.
Is that bad?
20 years colder, Keith. I
Okay.
had a
Well,
rental
well-
car roll down the hill by Bob's home. Don't go there. 20 years cold up on that twilight on the frozen lake. North wind about to
Yeah,
break.
yeah.
Footprints in
All right,
the
well,
snow.
All right. Well, thank you so much. This has really been interesting, and I'm really
Thank
grateful
you,
for
Mindy.
working
It's been
with that.
great.
Hey, Mindy, thank you for having me. Thank
Oh,
you.
you're
for having me.
welcome.
Absolutely brilliant. Thank you
Pleasure
so
and
much,
honor.
Mindy.
Oh, you're
You
welcome.
well, buddy.
You both. Okay. In
Let me
person.
know when you're over in London as well, Mindy.
What? Let you
Let
know?
me know when you're in London. You must go to the Troubadour. Show
No,
you
I
around.
want to. No, I want to. That'd be great. Yeah, I'm hoping to go in May. That's my aim is May. I got to make a decision, but I think I'm coming in May.
Okay. Well, if it works out, then but go to the Troubadour.
No, I think I
You know,
am. I'm pretty sure I'm
We'll-
going.
we'll stick you in for a gig at the Troubadour if you want. You know, you can stand on the same boards that Bob stood on and
I can
Jimi
do a
Hendrix.
gig at the Troubadour. I can do a
There
gig
you
at the
go.
Troubadour.
Yeah.
How?
Yeah.
For
There
you?
you go. Let's
Well,
go.
you
Line it
just
up.
ask the Troubadour if they want you to play a gig there, and you can play a gig.
You have your connection. You're connected to them, right? Because you got the
Yeah,
delivery.
yeah. We can
Huh?
but ask. Yeah, if it works
CEO
out.
of the
Why
Dylan
not?
Ring.
We'll see. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's see what happens. Okay. All
Why
right.
not? Why
I'll
not?
talk to you. I'll talk to you about it. And we'll see. Yeah.
And-
Okay. That'll be
and
great.
then-
All right. Well, I'll talk to you. All right.
And
Well,
then
anyway,
obviously
thanks so
a word
much.
with Mark doing magic as well. You know, the duo.
We will. All right. So let's see. All right. Well, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
Thanks
Okay.
so much, everybody. It's really great to talk to you.
Thank you. God bless.
Okay.
Good to see you, Mark. Cheers.
Bye, Keith.
Take care.
I'm glad
See
you
you
two
soon.
got
Cheers
each other.
now. Cheers.
Yes.
Oh, hat off. Whoop.
Okay.
Reveal.
Okay. Okay. Bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye.
Cheers. Okay. Hopefully, if anybody's still watching live or on replay. Okay, so I hope you enjoy that. And I will not have another show online. Well, I'll be doing some short little things, but not an actual interview show until after my show, April 11th. And so anyway, thanks so much for watching, and keep smiling, keep sweet, join the smile revolution. If you can focus on the good, there's always good going on, and focusing on gratitude. I'm not always good at it, but I'm working on it. And so thanks for watching. And I'm going to finish with my credits if I can find them, which I will do. Okay. Thanks so much. Bye. It's called the Smile Revolution that comes, goes round and back to you. So smile.